In the morning, citizens, welcome to the next News and Guidance Special Report. Coming at you from a rocky desert in Jordan, let's look at today's topic. Thank today's sponsor, a chirpy little parakeet named Judo. Fly over to our site at show.sbasp.com if you'd like to support this program. So today, we're attempting something, well, quite profound, I think. We're looking at two very different sets of source materials.
Worlds apart, really.
Exactly. On one hand, we have the ancient wisdom from the book of Proverbs, attributed to King Solomon.
Timeless stuff.
And on the other, a very contemporary, very ambitious proposal for global interfaith unity. It's called the Spiritual SHTREK Initiative.
Right, though the documents also call it the PeaceFirst Trail. And honestly, for clarity, let's maybe stick with PeaceFirst Trail for this deep dive. It feels a bit more accessible.
Good call. PeaceFirst Trail it is.
So our mission for you, the learner, is pretty crucial here. We're taking Solomon's moral architecture, those fundamental guidelines on living wisely, justly.
The core instructions.
The core instructions, yes. And we're testing them, holding them up against the ambitions and, frankly, the dangers of this modern tri-faith pilgrimage.
Can that ancient internal map actually guide this modern external journey towards, peace and unity? That's the question.
That's exactly the question we're exploring.
And it's quite an external journey they're proposing. It culminates, potentially, at the Temple Mount.
Right.
I mean, the thought of being able to respectfully observe the tablets of Moses, maybe even in some kind of Ark of the Covenant display, it's just awe-inspiring, like the world's best show and tell, right?
Absolutely awe-inspiring. But
Yeah, there's a huge but.
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge the massive prophetic, the eschatological weight that comes with that specific destination.
it's unavoidable in the sources.
Right. So our mandate here as we navigate this research is to try and avoid those eschatological pitfalls. We need to focus on the practical, actionable wisdom that could actually be used now to bridge divides. Exactly. The focus is on Proverbs principles for justice, equity, conduct how you act on the journey rather than getting lost in deciphering end times prophecy.
Okay, but I have to push back on that a little, even if the sources themselves suggest it. For so many people involved, Christian, Jewish, Muslim isn't the whole point of the Temple Mount destination tied up in that eschatology. Are we kind of sidestepping the most critical, maybe the most explosive part if we deliberately avoid it?
That's a very fair challenge, and we're not carving it out completely. We'll definitely address its significance later in Section V, but, for the purpose of actually building something practical, an interfaith project now, the PeaceFirst Trail authors seem to be doing a kind of spiritual filtering.
Filtering how?
They're essentially saying, look, we can't control the divine timeline or what happens next prophetically, but we can control our human response today. Let's focus on the common ground character, unity, righteous action, hoping that maybe that helps mitigate whatever conflict might arise.
Okay. Focusing on the how of the journey, not just the what at the end. I
Yeah.
can see the logic there.
Right.
So let's sketch out this PeaceFirst Trail idea. It's a nonprofit, and the inspiration comes directly from the American Appalachian Trail, the AT. That huge 2,190-mile trail crossing 14 states, no checkpoints inside the U.S.
A remarkable feat of infrastructure and, you could argue, social cohesion.
And PeaceFirst wants to take that model, perseverance, shared journey, crossing boundaries, and use it as a tool for interfaith harmony, especially for young people. Global scale.
And the key segment we're really digging into today is their most symbolic and probably most contentious proposal, this tri-faith trek. The plan is for it to run from Qusayr Amra in Jordan all the way to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
That Appalachian Trail analogy.
Yeah.
It's inspiring, but wow, it also shows the scale of the challenge, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The AT crosses U.S. states. They're distinct, sure, but part of one country, this PeaceFirst Trail. It aims to cross heavily militarized, often hostile international borders.
Huge difference.
It requires intense spiritual diplomacy on top of the physical effort, on top of the political hurdles. So the comparison shouldn't suggest it's easy. If anything, it highlights just how incredibly difficult this vision is.
Okay, let's get into the specifics of that external journey then, the actual path. Starts at Qusayr Amra in Jordan, ends at the Temple Mount.
Physically, as the crow flies, it's maybe, 80 miles? Around 128 kilometers?
Right, but that's not how you walk it. With roads, terrain, borders, it stretches out. Probably closer to 120, maybe 150 miles.
Definitely not a weekend hike. This is an endurance test, physically, politically, spiritually.
And to prepare people for that intensity, the organizers have planned these Symbolic preparation points along the way, designed to shift the mindset, right?
Precisely. From the everyday secular to the profoundly sacred. 3 key stops.
Okay, what's the first?
First, they propose a ritual rinse and a kind of reframing station, and they want to locate this at a rebuilt hammam, a bathhouse at Qusayr, Amra.
The 8th century Umayyad site. In the middle of the Jordanian desert.
That's the one. And the sources point out the irony, which is quite striking. This was originally built for, well, Caliph Walid Sirt's desert pleasures. It's famous for frescoes of dancers, hunting scenes, even nude figures representing the zodiac. Pretty secular stuff.
And they want to use that for spiritual cleansing.
Yeah. It seems deliberate. It's less about making a statement on Islamic purity and more about acknowledging shared cultural heritage first.
Ah, okay. So starting on common historical ground before getting into the heavy religious stuff.
Exactly. It sidesteps immediate religious friction. It's a pivot acknowledging you need to consciously move away from the purely secular world before you even attempt to approach the sanctity of Jerusalem, a sort of divestment.
Interesting. So where next after the hammam?
From there, it moves quickly to a deeply prophetic location, Mount Nebo.
Moses' viewpoint.
Yeah.
Deuteronomy, right? Where he saw the promised land but couldn't enter.
That's it. Deuteronomy 34. This stop frames the whole trek as a kind of preview of a promised future, a unity that's hoped for but not fully realized yet. It taps into shared prophetic heritage for all 3 Abrahamic faiths.
Powerful symbolism. And the third stop.
The third is a river rinse near Bethany beyond the Jordan, widely recognized as the place where Jesus was baptized by John. Matthew's gospel covers it.
So they're intentionally layering these sites: Islamic cultural roots, Jewish prophetic vista, Christian foundational event.
Trying to build a kind of cumulative reverence, a shared spiritual space, hoping it helps buffer against the divisions they know are coming, especially at the border crossing.
And guiding this whole thing, there's specific imagery and a motto.
Yes, the motto, the rallying cry, is simple but universal. Peace be with you.
Shalom Aleichem. Assalamu alaikum. It resonates across all 3 traditions.
Absolutely. And the iconography is the dove and donkey, symbolizing peace, humility, endurance.
And I saw the donkeys even get a nickname.
They do. Affectionately called donkey disciples. Adds a bit of lightness, maybe. And it's a reminder that even prophets often arrived humbly.
Okay, humility and peace are the themes. But now, the core rule, the really critical one, designed to manage the inherent risks of heading towards the Temple Mount.
The trio regulation. This is non-negotiable according to the sources. The trek must be done in small groups of 3.
1 representative each from a synagogue, a church, and a mosque. Always together.
Always together. And this rule is the key mechanism for managing what the sources explicitly call the holiness paradox.
Right. We need to unpack that term. Holiness paradox. What does that mean in this specific context? Lay it out for us.
Okay, basically, the holiness paradox deals with the immense problem of getting close to unfiltered divine presence. The idea, rooted in biblical theology, is that God's absolute holiness, his purity, demands an equal absolute purity from humans who approach him.
Which is a problem for humans.
Yeah, a fundamental problem. We are inherently imperfect, impure by that standard. So the closer you get to the ultimate point of divine presence, the Shekinah, especially associated with the Temple Mount and the Ark's potential location, the greater the inherent danger.
Danger of what? Like literally?
Well, the texts suggest a literal, potentially lethal risk. Think about the Old Testament purity laws, like in Leviticus 16, about who could even enter the Holy of Holies and when. And there's that phrase the sources use, lightning instant death risk.
Where does that come from?
It references warnings like in Numbers 18, verse 7, about unauthorized personnel approaching the sanctuary. And more vividly, the story in 2 Samuel 6, where Uzzah is struck dead instantly just for touching the ark to steady it when the oxen stumbled.
Okay, so the danger is profane contact with the supremely holy. How does walking in a group of 3 help with that?
It's designed as a buffer against profanation. That's the key term. The trio rule imposes structure and mutual accountability. It minimizes the chaos or the chance of one individual, maybe overcome with zeal or misunderstanding, acting irreverently or entering improperly.
So if someone from one faith were to, say, rush ahead or do something inappropriate,
the other 2 are right there, representing the other faiths, creating a shared responsibility for reverence. It's a human system trying to ensure a level of universal respect, hoping to prevent the kind of presumption or carelessness that, according to tradition, invites disaster.
it's a human safeguard against triggering a divine consequence.
In essence, yes, a very carefully constructed one.
But then there's the friction that's definitely not supernatural. the real-world border crossing, the Allenby Bridge.
Ah, yes. The sources call this a major sovereignty challenge, and it's more than just paperwork and queues.
It's intense, right?
Right.
Psychologically.
Extremely. You're moving between Jordan and Israeli control. Participants face potential separation, intense security questioning, unpredictable delays, a real sense of vulnerability. It can completely shatter that fragile sense of unity they've hopefully built up over the 100 miles or so before that point.
So how do they plan to handle that? More symbolism.
Partly, yes. The sources emphasize using spiritual framing during the crossing, like having the groups do shared readings right there, maybe that Deuteronomy 34 passage again, Moses looking out over the land.
Trying to keep their eyes on the spiritual prize, not the immediate political stress.
Exactly. Using share ancient prophecy as a kind of emotional armor against the very real, very modern geopolitical pressure. It's about mitigating the psychological damage of the crossing itself.
A fascinating application of Scripture, trying to manage contemporary anxieties. Okay, let's transition now. We've looked at the external journey, the path, the rules. Now let's map the internal journey using Proverbs.
Right, the moral compass for the trekkers. Solomon, in Proverbs 1, verses 1 to 7, says his words are for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding justice, judgment, equity.
It's presented as a practical manual for living right, not just abstract philosophy.
Absolutely. And Proverbs immediately hammers home the value of this wisdom. It's not cheap.
What does it say?
Proverbs 3, verses 13 to 15. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, for the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her.
Wow. So the internal map is explicitly more valuable than any external reward, any riches.
Exponentially more valuable. Proverbs 8, verses 10 and 11 repeats it. Receive my instruction, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies.
Okay, so wisdom's the ultimate treasure. What's the key to getting it?
The foundation, stated repeatedly, is reverence. Proverbs 1, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Chapter 9, verse 10. And the knowledge of the holy is understanding. It starts with recognizing something greater than yourself.
And if you reject that,
Yeah.
if you choose folly instead.
Well, the consequences, according to Proverbs, are catastrophic, especially for a group on a difficult shared mission. Wisdom itself issues a stark warning in Proverbs 1, verses 26 and 27. It says it will laugh at your calamity, mock when terror strikes you.
That sounds harsh.
It is. When your terror striketh as a desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind. It paints a picture of sudden, overwhelming disaster for those who ignore instruction. Choosing folly isn't just making a mistake, it's inviting self-inflicted destruction.
That's heavy. How does this apply directly to the truckers then? What specific actions does Proverbs guide?
It gets very practical, focusing on personal moral duties. Proverbs 3, verses 5 to 7 is key. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil.
So trust, humility, acknowledging guidance, avoiding evil. That's the path to safety.
That's what Proverbs 3 suggests. Verses coming 4 to 26 say, if you follow this, when thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yea, thou shalt lie down, and thy sleep shall be sweet. Be not afraid of sudden fear, for the Lord shall be thy confidence. Inner peace and security come from this alignment.
Okay. What about specific pitfalls Proverbs warns against that could derail a trek like this?
Two big ones stand out in the sources: sloth and greed. And we need to think about them in the context of the journey itself.
Right. Sloth isn't just being lazy on the couch here.
Exactly. On the trail, sloth is failing to prepare diligently. Neglecting your gear, your water, your physical conditioning. It's giving up when things get tough.
What's the proverb?
Proverbs 6, verses 6 to 11, it famously says, Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. It warns that if you indulge in a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, then poverty, or in this case, maybe failure, destitution on the trail will come swiftly, as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man, like being caught unprepared by a sudden hardship.
Hits you fast. And greed. How would greed manifest on a spiritual pilgrimage?
Greed corrupts the purpose. Proverbs 1, verse 19 warns that the ways of the greedy taketh away the life of the owners thereof. And chapter 15, verse 27 says, He that is greedy of gain troubleth his own house.
So, on the trek?
It could be seeking personal fame from participating, trying to leverage the unity message for sponsorships or media deals that are purely self-serving, prioritizing camera time over actual connection with your partners. It turns the whole spiritual mission into just another commodity, and that, Proverbs says, ultimately destroys the person doing it.
Interesting. Proverbs also talks about the family and community, doesn't it? How does that fit?
It emphasizes the foundation. Proverbs 14.1, "Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands." Wisdom stabilizes the home. And then there's the famous Proverbs 22.6, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it."
Generational wisdom,
Yeah.
passing it on.
Right. And the flip side is Proverbs 19.13, "A foolish son is the calamity of his father." The point for the trek seems to be that participants need that solid moral grounding from their families, their communities, before they even start. Without it, they're likely to crumble under the pressure.
Makes sense. You need a strong foundation. Okay, now, maybe the most crucial area of Proverbs for a diverse group under stress: communication, the tongue.
Absolutely vital. Proverbs is relentless about the power of words. It identifies the talebearer, the gossip, the spreader of rumors as a major threat.
What does it say about them?
Proverbs 18, verse 8, and it's repeated almost identically in 26.22. "The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly, like poison, seeping in, destroying trust and unity from the inside." Just imagine that in a small group of 3 from different faiths, stuck together for weeks.
Devastating potential. What about open conflict, angry words?
Proverbs gives direct advice. Chapter 15, verse 18. "A wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife." Simple contrast. And even more famously, verse 1 of that same chapter, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger."
The soft answer approach, diplomacy 101, basically.
Exactly, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Proverbs 18, verse 21 puts it bluntly, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Whether this tri-faith trek succeeds or collapses into acrimony hinges almost entirely on whether the participants can actually do this: restrain the harsh reply, offer the soft answer.
Wow. Okay, so that ancient wisdom about the soft answer, about controlling the tongue, how does the modern PeaceFirst Trail plan try to actually implement that?
This is where they bring in a modern psychological tool, Nonviolent Communication, or NVC. The sources actually call it verbal judo.
Verbal judo. Okay, explain that.
It's a structured way to communicate needs and feelings without blame or attack. And they plan to put NVC prompts literally on trail signage as a constant reminder, a direct countermeasure to the grievous words and tale-bearing that Proverbs warns against.
What kind of prompts?
NVC follows a 4-step framework: observation, feeling, need, request. So the prompts might be things like, observe the vista, feel the shared journey, name your need for connection, request a story. They guide the conversation toward empathy and understanding.
But why judo? How is it like a martial art?
Good question. It's like judo because instead of meeting aggression with aggression, you use the energy of a potentially difficult or divisive statement and gently redirect it. If someone says something provocative, a grievous word, the NVC training helps the recipient not react defensively. Instead, you might acknowledge the feeling or observation behind their comment, then state your own feeling, "I feel uncomfortable when I hear that," and your need, "My need is for mutual respect," and then make a request. "Could we talk about something we share right now?" You're using the momentum of their statement to pivot the conversation back towards connection, not conflict.
Ah, I see. Deflecting and redirecting, not blocking or attacking. That fits the soft answer idea perfectly.
It really does. And it directly addresses Proverbs 10.19. "In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise." NVC gives you a practical way how to refrain wisely.
And this would be crucial for the trio groups, wouldn't it? For navigating those really sensitive theological landmines.
Absolutely essential. The sources state NVC is specifically intended for graceful pivots away from topics guaranteed to cause division, like arguing over who the Messiah is or who owns the Temple Mount or specific end times beliefs.
So you could say, hearing that prediction makes me feel anxious. I have a need for us to focus on our shared journey right now. Could you maybe share a story about hope from your tradition instead?
Exactly like that. It provides a clear, structured, non-blaming way to steer back to common ground.
Okay, so that's communication on the trail. But the sources also mention tackling division off the trail, particularly online hate targeting young people.
Yes, that's a major concern. Online radicalization, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. It's a constant background noise that threatens the project's core mission. The sources cite a worrying statistic. 50% of American Jews reported experiencing anti-Semitism in 2024. That's the environment these young participants are navigating.
So what's the plan to counter that pollution, as the sources call it?
They propose youth-led depollution programs. The idea is that Gen Z participants help design and run these initiatives, making them more relevant. They draw on existing anti-bias curricula, like materials from the ADL or AJC, but tailor it.
Giving them tools to recognize and counter hate speech online and offline.
Exactly, equipping them with intellectual and moral armor against the kind of foolishness that social media can amplify so easily.
Which brings us straight back to Proverbs again, doesn't it? Chapter 13, verse 20. He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed.
Precisely. These programs are an attempt to consciously build a community of the wise for these young people to walk with, both physically and digitally.
Makes sense. How is all this funded? Treks, programs, signage? It sounds expensive.
It is. The initiative is seeking significant corporate sponsorship. The sources mention names like Sardar Biglari and George R. No, looking for commitments in the $50,000 to $100,000 range.
What's the pitch to corporations?
The emphasis seems to be less on direct ROI and more on goodwill branding, associating the company with peace building, empathy, resilience, those intangible social benefits.
Aligning their image with a positive cause.
Right, but then there's a more unusual fundraising concept mentioned, the silver card.
Yeah, I saw that. A hypothetical $7,000 digital ID for global contributors. It claims to democratize contribution and offer a low-barrier entry point. Honestly, $7,000 doesn't sound like a low barrier to me. That sounds pretty exclusive.
It's a definite paradox in the language, isn't it? And you're right to question it. The sources suggest the thinking isn't about democratizing the cost. $7,000 is clearly a high bar.
So what are they democratizing?
Access and the mode of contribution. That $7,000 price point seems like an intentional filter. It signals serious commitment from those core funders, reflecting that Proverbs idea that wisdom in supporting it is more precious than gold. They want people who truly value the mission.
Okay, so it's a high barrier for a reason. Where does the democratization part come in then?
Two ways, according to the documents. First, the silver card would offer virtual perks, online access, ways for people anywhere in the world to feel connected and contribute to the do good, get good cycle without having to physically walk or donate six figures.
So broader participation, even if the entry fee is high.
Right. And second, the funds raised from these silver cards are specifically earmarked for building the core infrastructure. The PeaceFirst Task Force, the shelters, the NVC training, the trail markers. Infrastructure that benefits everyone involved, including those who might participate in future programs or treks at lower cost or for free.
Ah, okay. So the high-cost contributions from the few enable broader access and support for the many. It's funding the one flock vision where different levels of contribution are all valued. That clarifies the slightly confusing language.
It's definitely a unique model they're proposing.
Okay, so we've walked the path, learned the rules, consulted Proverbs, built the support structure. Now we arrive at the destination, the Temple Mount, the absolute heart of the tension.
The culmination point. The potential site of a rebuilt third temple, maybe even housing the Ark of the Covenant with the original stone tablets as a sort of, well, tourist attraction is the provocative phrase used.
And this is where the different perspectives really collide. Let's take the Jewish perspective first.
From a traditional Jewish viewpoint, the rebuilding of the third temple is a central messianic prophecy. You see it in Ezekiel chapter 37, Isaiah chapter 2. It signals the ultimate redemption, the return of God's direct presence, the Shekinah.
And the Ark itself.
The Ark is the ultimate symbol of that presence, of the covenant. Incredibly sacred.
So the idea of turning it into a public attraction, even a free one, how does that land?
Deeply problematic for many, according to the sources. It risks being seen as profoundly profane, or more subtly, as premature profanation. Meaning doing something sacred but at the wrong time, or without the correct divine authorization or required level of purity. It clashes fundamentally with the historical secrecy and the incredibly strict purity rules surrounding the Ark and the Holy of Holies, like in Leviticus 16. It could be perceived as immense spiritual arrogance.
Okay, what about the Christian perspective, particularly the evangelical view mentioned?
For many evangelical Christians, a literal third temple appearing on the Temple Mount is interpreted as a major sign of the times, a key event predicted in prophecy that directly precedes the tribulation period.
Which prophecies?
They often point to Daniel 9.27, talking about a covenant and abominations, and Revelation 11, describing the temple being measured during that time.
So for them, this trek, culminating in access to a rebuilt temple, isn't necessarily a sign of peace.
It could be seen very differently. Public access or the establishment of some kind of interfaith center there might be interpreted as setting the stage for the Antichrist's deception. Thessalonians 2 talks about him exalting himself in God's temple, or just as a general profanation, echoing how Jesus condemned the commercialization of the temple courts in Matthew 21.
So intense anxiety from both sides about how and when anything happens regarding the Temple Mount.
Absolutely. Fear about timing, purity, authority, and ultimate meaning. It's incredibly fraught.
Which throws that trio regulation rule into sharp relief again. It seems less like a nice symbol of unity and more like a desperate practical measure.
It really functions as the core risk management strategy for this ultimate destination. It's trying to impose human control and accountability onto a moment charged with uncontrollable divine and prophetic significance.
Minimizing chaos, ensuring shared responsibility.
Exactly. Mandating that representatives of all three faiths must be present, must agree, must proceed reverently together. It's an attempt to create a controlled environment, a buffer against individual zealotry or accidental irreverence that could, in theological terms, trigger that lightning instant death risk.
Using multilateral human agreement as a shield against potential divine wrath or prophetic disaster.
That seems to be the underlying logic, yes. A fragile human structure attempting to navigate immense sacred power.
So whether anyone views this trek's end goal as hopeful restoration or a dangerous prelude to tribulation, the PeaceFirst Initiative is fundamentally trying to steer the narrative.
Towards shared responsibility, towards unity, towards prioritizing shalom peace right now over the conflicts that inevitably arise from differing interpretations of the future. It reminds me of Proverbs 17, verse 1. Better is a dry morsel and quietness therewith than a house full of sacrifices with strife. Choose peace now.
A powerful choice. Okay, let's try and bring this all together.
Well, this deep dive really highlights a stark contrast, doesn't it? On one side, you have the timeless crystal clarity of Proverbs guiding personal behavior, demanding humility, diligence, careful speech, ancient wisdom for the inner life.
And on the other?
The incredibly complex, messy, dangerous reality of trying to build peace in the modern world, embodied by this tri-faith trek. You absolutely need that ancient internal guide to even attempt navigating the modern external conflict zone with any integrity.
That feels like the core takeaway for you, the learner. And maybe for the trekkers themselves. It's not just about getting to the Temple Mount. It's about how you get there. It's about retaining that instruction, that wisdom along the entire path.
Right. Proverbs 16, verse 20 says, "He that handleth a matter wisely shall find good." That wisdom, that careful handling, requires all the internal discipline we've talked about long before you reach any physical destination.
And that focus on the internal, on our own ways aligning with wisdom, leads us perfectly to our proverb of the day. It connects personal righteousness directly to the hope for broader peace, which is the entire point of the PeaceFirst Trail.
Indeed. Our proverb of the day is Proverbs 16, verse 7. It offers this incredible promise, perfectly capturing the trek's highest ambition. When a man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him.
Walk righteously, and even conflict might resolve. A profound thought to carry forward. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into ancient wisdom and modern peacemaking. Adios, peoples.